Week 15 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few wide receivers I looked ahead on the wire this week for the start of the playoffs. First guy, DJ Chark, the Detroit Lions. I know I mentioned him last week, and he was on the cover last week as well, was DJ Chark. But he's come back over the last few weeks here, and he's put up numbers for this Lion team of fantasy owners. Week 12 versus Buffalo, 2 catches, 16 yards, a touchdown. Week 13 versus Jacksonville, 5 catches, 98 yards. And week 14 versus Minnesota, 6 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. This week, I know he's got a tough matchup at the New York Jets. I give up the second least amount of fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. But right here, him and Jared Goff are starting to get chemistry. He's been a deep ball threat, and a guy who can work the middle of the field as well here is DJ Chark. Just right now available still in 60% of fantasy leagues. Owners got to go out there and get him on their roster. The next guy is Chris Moore of the Houston Texans. So right now, I know Chris Moore hasn't done anything this season, but to go into a ball game and have a monster game versus the Dallas Cowboys, 10 catches, 124 yards in week 14 is something you got to go out there and talk about, even if it was a one-hit wonder, is Chris Moore. But we know Brandon Cooks is banged up. We know Nico Collins is banged up and not doing much. And Moore stepped in and had a good ball game. Week 12 of Miami, 2 catches, 7 yards. Week 13 versus Cleveland, 3 catches, 46 yards. And then week 14 at Dallas, like I said, a lot of targets and a monster game, 10 catches, 124 yards. Obviously, he could be fluky. He could be a one-hit wonder, available in 98% of fantasy leagues. But next week, obviously, the Texans will have to throw even more this week here in week 15 versus Kansas City. And they give up the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. Next guy, Zay Jones of the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's one good week, one bad week type of deal here with Zay Jones. But another big ball game for him in week 14 with 8 catches, 77 yards at the Tennessee Titans. So Zay Jones, like I said, inconsistent wide receiver. But him and Trevor Lawrence definitely have good chemistry for the most part and have some decent ball games throughout the season. Week 12 versus Baltimore, 11 catches, 145 yards, a 2-point conversion. Week 13 at Detroit, 2 catches, 16 yards. And week 14 at Tennessee, 8 catches, 77 yards, and the touchdown. So week 15, I know tough matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys going into Jacksonville. But like I said, obviously, the Cowboys gave up 10 catches, 124 yards to Chris Moore. So I think Zay Jones will be fine. I think he could have a decent ball game. And we know this Jaguar team's going to have to pass a whole lot with the Dallas Cowboys. If the Cowboys could come out and play normal football like they usually do, because that ball game versus Houston, they definitely could have lost. And Dak Prescott, he's got to get his mind right and he's got to stop throwing the interceptions. But anyway, here's Zay Jones, I think, can make a few plays. We saw Chris Moore do it versus this defense, and he's available in 49% of fantasy leagues. The next guy is Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions. I know Williams a rookie. I know he had that 1 catch for 41 yards and a touchdown early in the game. But he's a guy definitely keep an eye on as he gets healthy as the weeks go on and as Jared Goff gets more confidence with this offense. So the first 2 games of his NFL career, week 13 versus Jacksonville, only 1 target. And then week 14 versus Minnesota, 2 targets, the 41-yard touchdown. So right now I thought he was going to have a bigger ball game after obviously starting off with that monster touchdown was Jameson Williams. But obviously that didn't happen. He'll learn the playbook a little more. And this line receiving core is starting to pan out pretty well. Amon St. Brown, obviously. You got DJ Chark stepping up the last 3 weeks. And then I got Jameson Williams, an explosive rookie. So anytime a rookie starts to get going and gets opportunity, he's definitely a guy that would give a shot at on the wire. And he's available right now in 64% of fantasy leagues. And the final wide receiver I looked at on the wire this week's DeMarcus Robinson of the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, Robinson's a guy I've been talking about over the last few weeks here. He's a guy who's one of the number 1 targets, if not the number 1 target, over Duvernay at this point here for this Baltimore Raven team. And the last few weeks here, he's been serviceable. Week 11 versus Carolina, 9 catches, 128 yards. Then week 12 at Jacksonville, just a bad game, a catch for 17 yards. Week 13 versus Denver, 7 catches, 41 yards. And week 14 at Pittsburgh, 5 catches, 52 yards. Obviously, Lamar Jackson's out. Tyler Huntley, he got hurt in this game. And hopefully one of these guys could come back next week here at the Cleveland Browns. I know it's a Saturday ball game as well, which is not a good thing. Less rest for Huntley and Lamar Jackson with the extra day they're not getting. So right now, Robinson Hopefully, he could get one of these guys back at quarterback. And he's available right now in 85% of fantasy leagues. And he's definitely a wide receiver that can help you at least a decent bench stash for the playoff push. That's a few wide receivers out there on the wire here for Week 15 of the fantasy football season.